Al-Qaeda has returned, and this time it may actually win. Right now, Mali is just days or weeks away from becoming the first country in the world governed by an official Al-Qaeda affiliate. Yes, you heard that correctly. A branch known as the Group for the Support of Islam and Muslims, or JNIM, has surrounded the capital, Bamako. They've cut off fuel, food, and supply routes, and they're waiting for exhaustion to break the government before they deliver the final blow. For the first time in history, Al-Qaeda is close to having its own functional state. And what makes this even more alarming is that Mali is not isolated in the middle of nowhere. It lies at the heart of major African migration routes leading straight to Europe. A massive jihadist stronghold, 3 times the size of Spain, should worry everyone, especially considering how similar situations in Afghanistan and Syria eventually impacted the entire world. But to understand how we got here, we need to look at Al-Qaeda's transformation. When Osama bin Laden was killed in 2011, many believed Islamic terrorism was in decline. But instead of disappearing, Al-Qaeda changed strategy. It moved from loud, spectacular attacks to a slow, methodical takeover of territory, especially in Africa's Sahel region, where government presence is weak, borders barely exist, and weapons are everywhere. While the world focused on ISIS in Iraq and Syria, Al-Qaeda quietly built local alliances in Africa, imposed its own justice, and replaced the authority of failing governments. Over the last decade, the epicenter of global jihadist activity has shifted from the Middle East to Africa, closer than ever to Europe. And Mali is only one piece of a much larger puzzle. Terrorist groups linked to both Al-Qaeda and ISIS operate across Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and are advancing toward more stable countries like Benin, Ivory Coast, Togo, and Ghana. Even carried out its first attack in Nigeria recently, a country of 237 million people that is already struggling with Boko Haram and ISIS's local branch. The entire region is unraveling. Sudan is engulfed in militia wars, Christians are being massacred, and satellite images show scorched villages across the Sahel. Africa is living one of the worst security crises in its modern history. So why now? One major reason is that jihadist groups found inspiration in the Taliban's victory in Afghanistan. The message was simple: if they could expel the Americans, we can expel anyone. The strategy they copied is attrition warfare. They cut roads, isolate towns, intimidate local leaders, and slowly force populations to depend on them. They wait until the government collapses under pressure. Another reason is a political rupture in the region. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso abandoned West Africa's regional bloc to form their own alliance, which left them isolated and without international support. On top of that, Western nations, especially France and the United States, have drastically reduced their military presence. American drones, intelligence networks, and strategic bases previously used for counterterrorism were abandoned almost overnight. And into that vacuum stepped Russia. The Wagner Group, and now its successor, the Africa Corps, offered security assistance in exchange for access to gold, diamonds, and strategic positions. But instead of stabilizing the region, they left a trail of massacres, torture, and terror that pushed even more people into the arms of jihadist groups. The infamous Mora massacre, in which over 500 civilians were killed, was carried out by Russian mercenaries. With Western powers gone and Russia fueling instability, jihadist groups now have the perfect environment to expand. Which brings us back to Mali. If JNIM takes Bamako, Al-Qaeda will have something it has never had before: a real state. And that has 3 extremely dangerous implications. First, it would give them territory and safe havens, training camps, weapons, storage, and airstrips, everything in the open without hiding. Second, it would give them resources. Mali is rich in gold, lithium, and uranium. With control of these resources, a jihadist government could fund itself at an industrial scale. Third, it would give them legitimacy. Propaganda would explode. The message would be clear: the West couldn't stop us. We govern where they retreat. This would dramatically boost global recruitment. We've seen this movie before. When ISIS controlled a third of Iraq and Syria, attacks spread to Paris, Brussels, Madrid, Istanbul, and London. Thousands of foreign fighters from more than 100 countries joined them. A jihadist-controlled state in Mali could spark a similar chain reaction. And then there's the humanitarian crisis. millions could flee. Food shortages are already severe. Farmers have abandoned their fields. Markets are running out of basic goods. Clinics are closing due to lack of medicine and security. Many of those fleeing would head toward Europe. And a jihadist-run Mali could weaponize migration-controlling routes, charging tolls, or using migrants as political pressure. This is why what happens in Mali will not stay in Mali. The world learned that lesson with Raqqa, Mosul, and Kabul. Countries that once felt distant ended up shaping global politics, migration, and security for years. Now the question is, are we witnessing the rebirth of Al-Qaeda, or the opening chapter of something even worse? Should Western countries intervene again before it's too late? Or has the situation already passed the point of no return? Let me know your thoughts below and let's open up the debate.